Hi everyone, my name is John Osman. I'm with Professional Database Developers, LLC. We're known as ProDB Developers. And I'm going to start a video series here showing you how I do a typical project. I'm going to start with some diagramming and go to the file system, and then we're going to talk about code. And one of the things that I'm kind of excited to share with you is I'm going to show you how I use the MVVM pattern with Microsoft Access. And I don't think anyone else is doing it quite the way I'm doing it. I think, well, I've learned from other people, so some people are doing it close, but I put it together in a very similar way that Microsoft uses the MVVM pattern with other technologies like their Windows Presentation Foundation. But Microsoft Access is a database-centric development tool, and SQL Server is obviously a server database, very commonly used with those two products together. And I've been working with those two products for nearly 30 years, so I'm pretty good with both. I'm a VBA programmer as well as I know some other languages as well. But in this video series, we're going to definitely be using VBA and SQL, and I'm going to show you how I do the project and then introduce you to the MVVM pattern, and I hope you enjoy that. So let me get started here. This is the first video, so I got maybe 4 or 5 planned. But let me get myself out of the way. Whenever I start a project, the first thing I do is I start with this diagram right here. I show this to my customer because this is how I lay out a big project. On the server, you have databases. These two here would run on a network server, and this one here would run on my development machine. These are all SQL Server databases. So I would do all the development, build the tables, add fields, add indexes, things like that. And then when I'm happy with them and maybe written some VBA code against that structure, I can then script out a migration that does the same thing to the staging database. Then I go back to the code and I say, okay, now point to the staging database and let's see if the code still works. And if it does, then I say, okay, let's point to the production database, and that's what I deliver as usable software. So it goes through those stages. Now, over here on my desktop that I'm at right now at my house, I have underneath my user folder here, I have an Access application template. And I have these folders from 01 to 07 that very closely mimic this diagram. As you can see, user faces at the top, data forms, reports, and so on and so forth, all the way down to data access. These final 2 folders here, though, I name them this way so they sort properly for me. But in the last one, I keep things like diagrams, like the diagram you're looking at now would go in there, plus any diagrams I make along the way, any notes I take, but most importantly, my work logs. So basically, I keep a journal every day. I type out what it is I worked on, and that goes along with my my login. I have an app called Clockify that I use to log in and out, and I write a work journal that goes along with that. And so that's a daily thing. So that goes into artifacts, and that way my customer can look back over at any time he or she wants to and think to themselves, well, how did we get here? What was the path he took to get to this point? And it'll all be there in artifacts. Then the last folder I have is called Push Tools. Really probably should be called Push Tool because I only ever have a single application that will take all of the applications that I create in these other folders, in these 7 folders, and it'll compile them down to an executable code and then push them to where that they need to be in order for me to then deliver that to the customer. So that's my push tool. Okay, so that's just a basic overview of the diagram that I start with, almost always. I mean, there can be a few changes, but in general, this is the layout. And there's a couple of reasons for doing it this way. The best reason is security, because when you only have data access restricted to your models and your query builders, then if somebody else gets into any of these other files, they have no access to the data. They have to go through these properly, and then of course they need username and password to do that. So security is a big part of it. Also convenience. In order for me to tell all this code that we're going to go from the development database to the staging database or the staging to the production, I only need to go to 2 places, models and query builders. I tell them which databases to use. Just 2 places, just switch it over. One little piece of text I change and it just switches right over. Then I can test the rest of the code And then if all that works, I switch it over again to the production database. So convenience is a big part of it. And then another thing is, and this diagram lays it out, see up here where it says user interfaces, I like to get my system situated to where I can create a user interface very easily and very quickly. So if my customer, let's say they have a new position open up, or maybe they have a new hire, and they want to give that person access to the database, but of course they only want them to have A, B, and C, not X, Y, and Z. You know, maybe that person doesn't need access to the accounting functions and the accounting forms and the accounting reports, or human resources or stuff like that. The customer can tell me exactly what that person needs, and I can put together their dashboard, which is the start of their user interface, very quickly because all the work's already been done. And of course, security is taken into account through all of that. So whatever that user logs in as, whether it's a Windows login or a login directly to the database, or a combination of both, security will be in place through all this code all the way down to the data access level. And even at the server level, we'll have security in place. So, okay, that's an overview of the diagram and the template that I start with whenever I start a new project. I'm going to go ahead and end this video now. Bring my face back up and say goodbye to you. I'm going to make a few videos in this series. I'm not sure how many exactly, probably 4 or 5. And in one of the later ones, I'm going to show you the MVVM pattern. I'm very excited about that. As I say, I think I'm the only one who does it that way. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.